Your presence here matters more than you could possibly ever know. We've got a packed agenda. As I said, we're just going to jump right on in. To kick us off, why are we here, right? Sure, it's Pride Month, so the LGBTQ community certainly is more on the top of people's minds than perhaps it is the rest of the year. And I can tell you, as a transgender man myself, I know firsthand how scary and uncertain it is out there right now for many in the LGBTQ community, especially trans folks. I mean, I'm calling in right now from a family vacation in Disney, which means I'm in Florida, and we drove down from Maine to get here. And one of the first places we stopped was at a Florida Welcome Center. And technically, if I were to have used a restroom at that visitor center, which is a government-run facility, under Florida law that just passed this spring.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome. We're just jumping in now.
All right.
Just telling a quick little story. If I had used a restroom at that Florida Welcome Center, I would have had to use the women's restroom because that was the sex I was assigned at birth. And look at me. How do you all think that would have gone if I used the women's restroom? Probably not great. I chose not to go to the bathroom at all because of the anxiety I had around the possibility of what could happen if someone figured out that I'm a trans man in the men's restroom. And I'm sharing this as a white trans man with passing privilege. I share this as a tiny example of what some trans folks are experiencing out there today. So look, I know the news and all the scary pieces of legislation can feel overwhelming. So I very quickly want to uplift what's giving me hope right now and again, really center on why we're all here. And quite honestly, what's giving me hope right now is all of you. Seeing how the B Corp community has shown up and continues to show up to cultivate a future where we all can thrive together, that collective action is so powerful. And I've seen it work in so many beautiful and amazing ways. And there's so much that you all can do and are doing to support your LGBTQ coworkers and community. I can't possibly express enough gratitude to each and every one of you for showing up today and all the work you've done and continue to do. So thank you. As an extension, as a testament to how amazing B Lab and this community is, to support the continuation of mobilizing and serving the B Corp community, we're launching an official network through B Lab called the Be Proud Network. There's a link that's going to be dropped in the chat that we'll send around. You don't have to fill it out right now, but definitely bookmark it in case you have to jump off early or something. If you could take some time to fill that out, it's an opportunity for you to share if you want to be involved in the network. And if you're not involved in the network directly, what you might look to the network for in regards to resources. And we're going to have a network launch event this September, which you can also register for. We'll drop that in the chat for y'all as well. So fun and exciting things to look forward to. Now let's jump into some logistics here. Oh, and I lost my Zoom window. Am I still?
Sorry, Ben. I think that was my fault, but can everyone see the screen share?
Yep, we can see you and
Okay.
we can see the screen. Yep.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let's go ahead and advance to that next slide. Awesome. So folks, as you're coming in, make sure you put your name and pronouns in your, as you feel comfortable, into your Zoom link there. Basically, that's whatever you would want people to use in place of your name. So I use he, him, his. You might use she or hers, or they, them, theirs, or another set of pronouns. And feel free to add your B Corp as well, so we know what B Corp company you're calling in from. Awesome. So we are about waist deep into our opening and introductions. Then we're going to move right into the landscape with the ACLU. They're going to share some kind of overarching things that are happening, and then they're going to answer some questions. Then we're going to jump into some breakouts where we're going to have an opportunity to connect in small groups and share maybe what's coming up for us and what we're thinking about as we're coming off of that conversation with the ACLU. And then we're going to go into a longer breakout room that's going to be about 15 minutes, and that's going to be an opportunity for you to talk. We're going to have breakout rooms that are going to be themed on rainbow washing. So how you're kind of presenting yourself out in the world in regards to supporting the LGBTQ community, some business practices, steps, an individual allyship breakout room, and then an LGBTQ plus affinity space as well. And then the ACLU is going to close with some statements. And then of course, we've got some really important calls to action at the end. Looking at the next slide. There we go. These are all the amazing humans that have helped make this event possible. We've got amazing B Labbers on the call: Becca Cork, Carson Bolding, Grace Mauser. And then from the community, we have myself, the amazing Kel Moody from Alluvium Gatherings, Tim Frick from Mighty Bites, and many hands make for light work. There are a bunch of other folks that contributed to this. We've got Nicholas Halar from Eat Well Global, Amanda Yon from Cultivating Capital, who's also going to be helping with the questions too. Ella Burrows from The Mix, Kevin Lee from Dr. Bronner's, and Sarah White from Fairware. So much gratitude to y'all for making this event possible. Next slide. And then we have our friends from the ACLU. We've got Danielle Sibler and Arlie Christian. And with that, I think I'm just going to pass it right over to you, Arlie from the ACLU, to jump on in.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's really such a pleasure to be here with you all. And we're just so grateful that you're taking the time to talk about these issues, talk about what's going on right now across the country, and what particularly what our trans community is facing right now. We need you all, and we're just so glad to be here with you. My name's Arlie. They or she pronouns are good for me. I'm a campaign strategist over here in the national office of the ACLU, and I work on all types of LGBTQ campaigns. And so, really what I wanted to come and talk to you about is just giving a bit of like the overview, the landscape of what's happening in this moment. And my gosh, it changes day to day. So here we go. But, I think there's been some really exciting updates in the last week, in the last few days. So I think this is a really great time to be having this conversation. Let's start at the, 5,000 square feet. I don't know how far up that is. Let's start at the large view. We have seen a wild amount of anti-LGBTQ bills just this state legislative session alone. There's been nearly 500 that the ACLU is tracking. Danielle just dropped in there our tracker. It's depressing. It's depressing. So click around in there, but content warning. It's the number of attacks on our LGBTQ community that we've seen just in state legislative sessions has doubled over the past few years. It's sort of increasing. So let's talk about that. Let's get into it for a second. But these bills, the majority of them are attacking trans people and specifically attacking trans youth. And they're not just proposals. We've seen 64 separate anti-trans bills pass this state legislative session alone. We have seen 19 states ban best practice healthcare for trans youth in some way or another. So this, either they're telling doctors you are not able to provide gender affirming care for trans youth. They're so criminalizing doctors. They're telling parents you are not able to provide this care, access this care for your child. You're not able to refer patients to receive gender affirming care. There's a couple of ways that states have gone about this, but 19 states. And I think the really important thing to recognize in this, our little history here is this is in the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years that we've seen this attack on healthcare for trans people, for trans youth. And so we have to, break that down a little bit. Why is this happening? What's going on? Had doctors just gone off the rails and all of a sudden started, providing care to youth that is not sanctioned, that is not okay, and the answer is no. Spoiler alert. So this is a political phenomenon, right? This is a phenomenon of extremist politicians who have decided that trans issues are a good wedge issue that they can use to rile up their base. They can get a lot of good fear factor and talk about trans people in a way that motivates their base to vote for them. It's really the bottom line. I will say, depressing so far, right? I'm sorry, I'm telling you a lot of depressing things, but of these 19 states that have passed these bans, ACLU is kept very busy in this process, right? We actually are in 8 states right now, challenging bans on gender affirming care for trans youth. There are other orgs that are challenging in a couple more states, but we are in 8 states. Let me tell you, these lawsuits are not easy. They are very intense, lots of heavy details, lots of work. But you know what's giving me so much hope right now is, so our first healthcare ban passed in Arkansas in 2021, right? Just a few years ago. And we sued them immediately. And just 2 days ago, yesterday, we got a win, a full win. A federal judge blocked the Arkansas healthcare ban. Whew, thank goodness, right? This is our first this was the first healthcare ban case that came into the courts, and we won. And it's not an easy place to win either, right? So just this fact alone is really making me feel better, and I think a lot of folks feel better. And I think for me, it really symbolized, extremist politicians can say essentially whatever they want, right? Unchecked, and they can tell stories that are, fear-based narrative that are not based in fact and truth. But when you get all of the evidence in front of a judge, when you show a judge, this is what medical associations have, laid out for years as the proper way to treat gender dysphoria in youth and adults. And these are the best practices. And these are the studies that we've done. And these are the ways that this improves people's lives. And a judge looks at all of that and they say, well, yeah, of course, this is necessary care. And if you ban this care, you are harming real people and real communities. And so, I think it just really helps us recognize in the moment, this is a politically based attack. And when we look at the facts and we look at the evidence, we know that we are right. It gave me just a ton of comfort to have, I guess we have these checks and balances for a reason, right? So legal, cooler legal has prevailed and have struck down the law in Arkansas. And it's not the only good decision we do have preliminary injunctions on our healthcare bans in Alabama and Florida and Indiana. So judges are looking at this information and seeing, wow, these laws are harmful to youth. They are, shutting down the free speech of doctors and parents and medical professionals. Laws that are saying doctors cannot refer their patients for best care. They cannot talk about this care. Like, these are free speech violations, equal protection violations, due process violations, discrimination against a particular community who are there blocking access to care. So wow, what a great week it's been. And so, healthcare bans are not the only type of attack that we've seen in the state level. We do have a large number of states who have blocked access to sports for trans youth. That has been a very, very popular attack bill. And we do have some legal challenges on those cases as well. We have some good preliminary injunctions on those. We have preliminary injunctions in Idaho, in West Virginia, on sports ban cases. And remember, when we're talking about bans on trans youth playing sports, we're talking about young kids who are being blocked from participating in school activities. We have our client in West Virginia her name is Becky, and she is a runner, and she wasn't able to run with her team, right? We had Luke, who's a golf player, who also did one of our lawsuits. So I think it's important for people to remember what we're talking about. We're talking about access to activities and to full participation in school and in life for young trans youth. So those sports bans are active as well in many states. We've also seen, just to give you the full breadth of the slate of hate bills, we've also seen lots of bills restricting right to free expression, censoring or restricting drag shows. I think, these have gotten a lot of attention recently. And we got a good decision as well on one of our drag ban cases. We sued on behalf of the Southern Utah Drag Stars. and got a preliminary injunction in that case just recently. It might have been last week or earlier this week. I don't know. They're flowing in. This great news. And so the Southern Utah Drag Stars are now able to host, this family-friendly drag performance that they applied for a permit for. So let me see. Let me pause for a second and look at the questions. Do any of the federal lawsuits that block these bans have a larger effect on any other state bans? That's a great question, Kel. So not yet, so the Arkansas decision that we saw is it was a federal judge, but it's the decision just affects the state of Arkansas. But I will say that and same with the preliminary injunctions we've gotten in a few of the other states, in Alabama, Florida, Indiana. I will say that each of these decisions is certainly influential for judges. These are new cases that that judges are being faced with because this is a new phenomenon, a political phenomenon that's happening. And a lot of the witnesses for the state side defending the ban on healthcare are the same witnesses. It tends to be, and if any of you followed the legislative process for these hearings, they get the same few doctors who usually oppose gender affirming care for moral kind of social reasons. And they're sort of more extremist doctors. And they get those same doctors to testify at each of these hearings and say that gender affirming care should not be allowed. And those are their witnesses. And the state in Arkansas and quite a few of the other places have very little to no evidence of the harms of gender affirming care. They have very little to no evidence of the state's reason for blocking this care. So each judge, looking at that, is able to look at other states making those decisions and say, well, that state, basically said that this witness, this doctor from the opposing side was not credible. And so I'm going to say the same thing. So it's influential each time we get a good decision. So it's making us feel good, but it's not precedent in terms of legal precedent that the other states are going to have to follow. But we do expect that some of these may go up to circuit courts and then set precedent for the circuits. And at some point we will likely see something in the Supreme Court. So great question. I'll talk a little bit about how I'm doing on time, but we talked about all the terrible laws. Oh, Ben, you tell me.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say
Yeah.
just some questions that I think might also be helpful for some of our Canadian friends, and I think this would probably be applicable to anyone who is looking to confront anti-LGBTQ legislation in their communities, even if it's at like the school board level or even our Canadian friends that might not be like province level, but thinking more locally. What can folks do to confront anti-LGBTQ legislation more broadly?
Yeah.
What are some good actionable steps that would?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So depending on where you are, you're either looking at a state or a province where you are seeing attacks on access to care, or you might be in a state where you're seeing sort of proactive ways to protect care. And let me touch on that really quickly so you understand what that is. So some of our more progressive states have been passing like shield laws, right? Laws that say we want to make sure that in our state we are allowing people access to gender affirming care, and often they'll cover like access to abortion care as well in those same laws. And we want to make it as hard as possible for other states that are trying to ban that care to come after people in our state, either people that travel to our state or doctors that are providing care in our state. We're going to try and make it as hard as possible. I will say, legally speaking, shield laws are complicated, right? We do have the whole full faith and credit process, and it's hard to ensure fully that everyone will be protected from a hostile state, right? But the spirit of these laws is sort of defiant. We are doing everything we can to protect these rights. So if you're in a state that, you're under attack, trans folks and LGBTQ people are under attack, we really need your voices. We really need you to step up. Attending hearings is super important. I mean, we just passed state legislative session, but more locally, I mean, Ben, you're sort of alluding to this. It's really important that we're having these conversations in our communities, right? And so if you see, if there are trans events going on in the community, uplifting them and attending them, folks need to understand and know their trans neighbors, right? It's just, we're in a time where we've seen a lot of misinformation and a lot of hatred, and we need to overcome that by making sure that people are familiar with trans folks and understand our goals and our dreams and the desire to kind of live lives that are healthy and fulfilling. So I think, showing up for those kinds of conversations in your community, like you said, school board work is super important. Ensuring that the schools in your community are friendly to their LGBTQ students is so important. And so, this has been a place where we've seen a lot of attacks on, access to books that are about LGBTQ people, right? And rights of students to use the name that is comfortable for them, use pronouns that are comfortable for them. These things need to be part of an inclusive school community and an environment. And so it's really important that you're able to speak up for those, whether or not, you have a trans child in your life. It's really important to show people that is the way to create an inclusive community. So there's a lot of different ways to step up. Definitely look up your local LGBTQ and trans-led organizations because it's so important to support them.
Oh my
Does
gosh,
that answer the
that's
question, Ben?
amazing.
Yeah.
That totally answers the question. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Arlie. We so appreciate it. I think at this moment now we're going to transition to our first breakout group. But fear not, we're gonna hear from the ACLU again at the end of our time together here. So looking forward to that. Thank you again, Arlie. So appreciate it. All right, friends. So for this breakout, this is really meant for you to have the opportunity to be in community with one another. Think about doing a round of brief intros, share your name, pronouns as you feel comfortable, what B Corp you work at, and really what brought you here, maybe how you're feeling, maybe what's coming up for you as you were listening to Arlie sharing about all of the different pieces of legislation that are happening right now, and maybe what you're thinking about in terms of action. And so now I believe we've got my B Lab friends. Are folks getting sent into breakout rooms, or are they selecting their break? Oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're going to check in with each other. It's going to be beautiful and awesome. Share the love, friends. There's some great prompts there. I would also recommend maybe screen grabbing some of these. So how are you feeling? What are you thinking about? What opportunities do you see for yourself and your business in terms of supporting the LGBTQ community? And in the theme of the B Corp month this year, what does going beyond mean to you, right? Go ahead and join those breakout groups and enjoy the conversation. We'll see you all back here in the main room.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. How was that for everyone? Did you get a chance to meet people? Have some good conversations? I know we did. That was really, really useful. All right, I think everybody's rolling back in. So this is a community event, and our goal with the next section is to roll our sleeves up and actually dive into community and figure out what as a community that we can do. And so we're going to break out into into another set of breakout rooms, but these are going to be more specific around topics. So we're going to be talking about several topics beyond rainbow washing, business practices, and how to support your LGBTQIA plus identifying team, individual allyship, as well as an affinity space for those who are identified as being part of this community. A little bit more detail on the next slide, just so if you're not sure exactly which to join. Beyond rainbow washing is really going to be about discussing how to stand up as a company beyond putting the pride flag up in June. It's marketing of individuals, communications teams, others looking into community partnership. That would be a good room for you to go to. We're going to have several rooms on the business practices and how to support workers, discussing policies that companies have put in place, things to consider on how to better support their LGBTQIA plus employees, as well as if you're a business leader, HR professional, et cetera, you might want to join one of those. There's going to be 4 of them. The individual allyship is for folks who want to talk to other allies on how to show up and support this movement on an individual level. And then finally, we're going to have an affinity space for folks who identify as LGBTQIA plus to come together, share, connect, and discuss and possibly pick up on where you just ended in the last conversation in terms of what self-care looks like in this moment. There's going to be multiple options for each topic. And I believe that Becca is sharing those rooms right now. If you have thoughts about your last conversation that you want to share in the chat, please do. Otherwise, we're going to, once Becca gets the rooms up and rolling and the team from B Lab, then we'll go into those breakout rooms. And you'll be able to see which you can choose which one you want to be. Anybody feel like sharing? All right. Becca, are you ready to go? No, 1 more minute. All right.
I see an article in the chat from Celeste. If someone wants to talk about that.
Hi, yeah, that was me. I dropped that in there. I just mentioned it in my breakout group that I'd seen this, I believe it was 2 nights ago on the PBS NewsHour. They had a really, really great interview with a drag artist who very eloquently and gracefully and beautifully, with a lot of humanity, explained the art form and the community. I thought it was very good. So I just shared that out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I finally have done it. I typed as fast as I could.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
gonna say,
Typos. But
I'm
the
impressed, Becca.
thank you. The one last thing I'll say is we're trying to keep these rooms pretty evenly distributed. So you may have Jamie pop in there and ask you to move with her so that you don't have too many people in a room. Okay, so I'm gonna open them up now. And hopefully we don't have to move people too much. And facilitators, if you don't have it, there's a list there with which room you're meant to be in. But I've named them after the doc we had going. Definitely seems like maybe not enough time.
Real quick.
Never enough time, never enough time. But reminder, this is the start of conversations. Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, I know. I feel like at
fast.
both of these breakouts, there's still talking happening right up to the very last second. So rich conversations for sure. We're going to let the ACLU share with us a few calls to action. So I'm going to pass it off to Danielle. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. So thank you for everyone I got to connect with in the breakout rooms, and thank you all for taking a moment to hear from my colleague Arlie earlier today. I want to start this conversation by just naming a few different ways in which companies can take action, and to be clear that you don't have to take action in each of these ways. Obviously, the more the better, and there are ways to activate around LGBTQ rights that can best fit your business model. And it's also always helpful to be more cutting edge, to be pushing forward, to be finding new ways to activate. So first one, and this is partly in response to the rainbow washing breakout room, is think about who the right expert partners are, both internally and also externally within your community or nationally. Obviously, the ACLU has chapters in every single state, so we're happy to be a resource, but really making sure that you're rooting any advocacy that you're thinking of with experts on the ground who are closest to understanding the issues in play. 2 is thinking about what convening power does your business have. So shout out to B Corp and to all of the leaders who brought us all together today. And also think about what business associations, what chambers of commerce are you part of? How can you act as a convener or connector with like-minded businesses? Because we know that the private sector in particular can have a salient voice in the conversation about LGBTQ rights, especially with policymakers and with industry. The third piece is amplify. So once you have kind of your critical mass, or you don't need your critical mass, but it's helpful. And once you have the right partner to know what messaging to amplify, it's really helpful for businesses in particular to raise your voice and use your platforms to help educate, raise awareness, and get more people involved in the conversation. And then direct advocacy is, I'll talk about in a minute, is always an amazing opportunity, and, you know, to varying degrees of availability for different companies. I will say on the advocating front, it's not always direct advocacy or public advocacy. A lot of the work that we do with companies is back channel, behind the scenes advocacy, calling policymakers, writing letters. So you don't always have to be out in front when you're advocating as a business. There's also really valuable ways that you can do it behind the scenes. And then a final bucket is thinking about who are your employees, who are your external audiences, and can you educate and activate the audiences that you have that are part of your community. Slide. So to get into a little specifics, just knowing that there was a lot of thirst from this group to think about what's happening at the state level and at the federal level. So one, we already discussed this, but advocate privately or publicly. And so one would really encourage folks to group themselves and to find like-minded businesses. And then again, try to partner with an organization that's already doing this advocacy work that can help identify key ways that you can be advocating in the most impactful way possible. Again, promoting LGBTQ rights within business associations and Chamber of Commerce. You'd be amazed at how important it is to change the conversation within industries. Can really play a huge role in making sure that policymakers understand that these civil rights issues are also business issues and impact their economy. And so we're happy to help equip folks if it's of interest with facts and information about how you make the business case for civil rights issues. On the Amplify front, I would say this is a way to encourage your audiences to take action, to learn about these issues. And then finally, another way that you can take action at the state level, which is really important and was enumerated in some ways around like school boards and banned books, is thinking about how you can encourage civic participation more broadly and remind your constituents, your audiences, of why voting is so important based on your company's values, and especially help people know when there are off-cycle elections. Slide. At the federal level, there's a lot of parallels, right? So a lot of the things that you can do at the state level are reflected at the federal level. I'll just tease out a couple here. One flag is that there are, in addition to all of the state attacks, we are also seeing a few federal attacks against gender affirming care, both laws that are being introduced and also a potential initiative to try to remove federal funding for gender affirming care. So kind of like a Hyde Amendment for trans rights. So I'll drop this in the chat, but we have a federal action right now, which we would be grateful for you all pushing to your audiences or individually taking action. And just want to shout out a big thank you to Ben and Jerry's and Dr. Bronner's and a few other B Corp members that are already pushing out this action to their audiences. And I'll also drop my email in the chat because I'm more than happy to be a resource if you're thinking about taking action as a company.
Thank you so much, Danielle. We have to wrap up here pretty quickly. I know that I feel like we could have spent 2 hours on this conversation. I really appreciate the ACLU's representation here and sharing all of this really important information. I'm assuming my B Lab friends that we can maybe pass along the information shared by ACLU in a follow-up email for the attendees of this call, hopefully. And just wanted to remind folks, we said it at the beginning, but we will put again into the chat in case any of you missed it, the link to fill out the survey. We're trying to collect information about what people are interested in, how you want to engage with the network, if there's any interest in being part of the leadership of this network. So please fill that survey out to help us inform what we're going to be focusing on with this network. And then also feel free to RSVP to our launch event in September. If you do have an interest in leadership and indicate that in the survey, we will be contacting folks for that in advance of our September meeting, but wanted to kind of give the summer to let people do their thing and have their fun and vacations and all that, and really hit the ground running in September for our kickoff meeting. So with the last 2 minutes that we have for today, I would love to hear folks in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. What's something that you're taking away from this that you're gonna commit to as an action? Love to hear from anybody chiming in, or just feel free to just plop something into the chat. But it was really great. If nobody wants to share, I'll give people a second. ACLU link, yes. Nice. All right, then I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have these conversations, and this is just the beginning of much more to come. Really looking forward to getting involved with this community and you all, and hope to see you in September, if not sooner.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.